too under the water. I felt someone clutch my legs and drag me down. I lost my reason and kicked like mad until I was free and shot to the surface. A body floated by, its limbs still kicking. It must have been the man who clutched me. I lay there almost sobbing at such terrible sights. So this was war.
Sicily will soon be subdued. Within a fortnight, Benito Mussolini will fall from power. Soon after that, Italy will seek surrender, leaving the German army to fight alone.
Here's an important piece of news which has just come in. Rome Radio has announced that the King of Italy has accepted Mussolini's resignation.
The Allies finally breach the walls of Hitler's European empire. By the end of 1943, Britain has become an armed camp. 1.5 million Allied servicemen have arrived. Canadians, Australians, New Zealanders, Poles, Czechoslovaks, Free French. But most of them are Americans. A United States Army booklet offers advice to its young soldiers.
The British have phrases of their own that might seem funny to you. It isn't a good idea to say, "I look like a bum." For the British, that means you look like your own backside. Just a tip if you're trying to shine in polite society. You'll be interested in getting to know your opposite number, the Tommy you've heard and read about. 2 actions will slow up the friendship: swiping his girl and not appreciating what his army's been up against. Yes, and rubbing it in that you're better paid than he is.
The US servicemen are glamorous guests. The British try hard to be good hosts. For children struggling with the hardships of war, the Americans are like movie stars. Marjorie Dineen is an evacuated mother in South Wales.
A day of thrills for the children. All of them were invited to the American Army camp. Their faces were a joy to see. They all had a soldier companion. They went in the mess with him and had spam sandwiches, donuts and peaches. All the children had a great time.
The Americans add spice to wartime Britain. Dawn Yardy, a civil defense volunteer in Weymouth.
Went to Bellevue last night. Hawks and Freeman is now being made into a club for Yanks. Cool. Harry Berman bought some records. Glenn Miller, In the Mood. Harry James, You Made Me Love You. Woodchopper's Ball. We did a good conga and jitterbug. Oh, mama, snake hips.
Relationships between GIs and British women become a source of scandal.
Somebody else has taken my place.
Maureen Bolster, a Wren courier, writes to her fiancé Eric Wells in the RAF in the Middle East.
They're saying that English women are the most immoral in the world. Nice, isn't it? Opposite me sat an American army officer and a pretty, well-dressed girl. They were hand in hand, talking about the hotel they'd been staying in. Then she made a neat little joke about her husband being abroad and what the eye didn't see. I felt rather sick.
Little you care for vows that you made.
A London office worker, Vivian Hall.
Unfortunately, the only ones who show any friendliness are our most crude specimens of womanhood, doing anything they want them to do and fleecing them in payment. Here speaks the crusty old maid, I suppose, but I hate to have the British judged by these little bitches.
The south coast of England, June 1944. Yet again, the British Army is embarking to fight in France.
The hour of our greatest effort and action is approaching.
Months of deception by the Allies, what Churchill calls a bodyguard of lies, conceal plans for the greatest seaborne invasion in history, Operation Overlord.
The magnificent armies of the United States are here. Our own troops stand at their side in true comradeship.
The vital strike to demolish Hitler's empire in Western Europe is about to be made. A massive fleet is to assemble in the Channel. 1 million men prepare for battle.
When the signal is given, the whole circle of avenging nations will hurl themselves upon the foe and batter out the life of the cruelest tyranny which has ever sought to bar the progress of mankind.
Helping transport the Canadians to Normandy, British seaman Fred Wright.
Off steams the Armada, 3 long columns of ships stretching from skyline to skyline. What a wonderful sight. We have aboard our steamship a great body of men, Canadians, all in grand spirits, for they all know what they're going to France for. I could do with a pint.
Hugh Bone from Upminster, Essex, a 25-year-old lieutenant in the 2nd Battalion East Yorks Regiment.
Most of us took communion. The ship's padre had a few words to say to us. We listened to the naval orders over the loud hailer.
There are 5 code-named assault beaches. Utah and Omaha to be attacked by United States troops. Gold, Juno and Sword by the British and Canadians. Tom Tateson, a 20-year-old from Yorkshire, a private in the Green Howards.
No one slept much that night. Reveille was sounded at 3:15. I remember thinking that I ought to be frightened. Instead, I seemed to be detached, as though I were watching a film. What had seemed somewhat unreal now became a reality.
"5:30 a.m., 6th of June, 1944. D-Day. Over 4,000 Allied warships begin a massive bombardment of the German defenses. Fred Wright watches the Canadians make their final preparations.
The big battleships are still banging away like hell. The air is full of planes. Very rough sea. I feel right sorry for them. Poor lads. What a bad start.
Hugh Bone is on his way to Sword Beach with the East Yorks.
By now we could hear the enemy machine guns, the explosions of enemy mortars on the beach. We clutched our weapons. Now was the moment. pretty close to us. People were hit. Some were dead, others struggling to crawl out of the water. We couldn't help them. Our job was to push on. There were some horrible sights. Men calling out for help. I wanted to pull a body out of the waves, but he looked to be dead. I had no time or duty there.
Fred Wright watches the Canadian landing craft come back.
I can see our boats returning. Now we'll get some news. I'm crying like a baby. Can't help myself. What a terrible sight. Our boys, only a few hours ago so full of life and spirits, now lying at the bottom of the boat, seriously wounded.
Fred Turnbull, an able seaman in the Royal Canadian Navy, had taken the British Marines to Juno Beach. Now he's carrying the dead and injured home.
Many were dying. One Marine commando, who this time last night was telling me of his wife and kid, was lying on the deck, covered in blood-soaked blankets. He had no face.
D-Day has come. Early this morning, the Allies began the assault on the northwestern face of Hitler's European fortress.
Back home, Florence Speed and Gwyneth Thomas listen as the dramatic story unfolds.
Under the command of General Eisenhower, Allied naval forces supported...
One's stomach turned over hearing the news. A taximan told the baker's wife that in the West End, 5,000 people had queued up for newspapers and had to be dispersed by the police. Collins, the grocer, told me that he cried when he heard the news.
This is Richard Dimbleby. The British, Canadian and American troops who landed on the coast of France are already several miles inland, on a front sufficiently broad to be more than a bridgehead.
Our hearts feel lighter. News is coming through that all goes well in France. They've secured the beachheads. I can hear the birds singing.
2,500 Allied troops are killed on D-Day. Far fewer than predicted. Most of the dead are Americans, killed by murderous fire on Omaha Beach. By the end of the first day, 150,000 men are ashore. Once proud soldiers of the German army are now a stream of beaten men.
June 13th. Churchill was over in France yesterday. It was reported that he wanted to go with the troops on D-Day and had literally to be held back. May he live to be 100.
We've turned the most vital corner of the war. Ahead lies peace.
Now it really is the beginning of the end.
Or you may get something to remind you of the old red, white and blue.
Autumn 1944. Europe is gradually being liberated by the Allies. The German army is in retreat in the west and on the Russian front. On the home front, after 5 years of war, the nation keeps going by organizing holidays at home and through the British sense of humour, typified by radio comedy.
Here they are, Elsie and Doris Waters, otherwise Gert and Davy.
Let's have a look at you. Is your face dirty or is it my imagination?
My face is clean enough, I don't know what your imagination's like.
Excuse me, would you mind reading this letter? I'm a bit worried.
Dear sir, unless you leave my wife alone, I shall shoot you stone dead on sight.
You'd better leave the man's wife alone.
I can't.
Why not?
He hasn't signed his name.
Many will be exhilarated. Everybody will be methylated to hear that it's that man again.
Cannot do you now, sir.
The Mass Observation Survey finds the country's children weary of the war. Their frustrations directed at the enemy.
I think Hitler is a pig who only thinks of himself and thinks he's marvellous and wants to boss everybody about.
If Hitler was captured, the best death for him would be dreadful torture and make him suffer such agony. His moustache would be set alight, and when he's half dying, he would be torn with pinchers and executed.
St. Patrick's Day, 1944. The band of the 8th Belfast Regiment, Royal Artillery, celebrate in Burma.
19 hours, Greenwich Mean Time.
This is London calling. Here is a broadcast of world news. British troops advancing into Burma from the west have cleared another 5 miles of the road to Tidib.
Peter Gadsden, a company commander, 4th Battalion, 14th Punjab Regiment.
Dear Mum and Dad, you remember about this time last year it suddenly rained? Well, it's gone and done it again. We got soaked, lost the road, and finally arrived at our destination at 10:30 a.m. the next morning, having been marching since 1:45.
Through recordings, the gunners in Burma are able to send their personal messages back to Britain.
Greetings, Manchester, from your boys in Burma. Now, here's somebody Haslington people will know. What's your name, Mum, dear?
Bombardier Potter.
All right, carry on.
Hello, Dad, Mum, everybody. How are you? We're still knocking Johnny Jack for 6, and we'll still continue so. So cheerio, chins up, keep smiling. Here's got a levy from Council.
Hello, Mum. Hello, all at home. I'm okay. Hope to be home soon. Cheerio.
Oh, Mrs. McHugh, this is your long-lost husband here. Hello, Lily, darling. Hope you're keeping fit. The children, I know they've grown. Give my love to Mother and all at home.
The Allied push into Burma continues throughout 1944. Peter Gadsden.
Among your most recent letters received was one telling me to forget the medals and keep my head down. Sorry to disobey, but I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear that I've been awarded the Military Cross. Your youngest son has not proved a disgrace to you. We're still moving up, but can now hear the Jap getting a